First of all, good morning, everyone. Really a great pleasure to be in Delhi, and of course, great thanks to Terry and Rajendra Pachauri, dear friend, for inviting us. And what I'm going to try to do is talk about human development matters, which of course is a little bit more than income matters. I think the story of the BRICS is that most countries are doing better in human development terms, not just in growth or income terms. And if you were to project this in the future, 30 years from now, China, India, Brazil, just the three countries themselves will be more than half of the world's output. So that gives you a sense of a lot of potential, a lot of challenges along the way. But actually the story is more than the BRICS, and I know that we are talking about the BRICS, and I'll just give you a little quick figure on that. It's really the issue of the rise of the South. Take the case of Africa. Africa is about 1 billion people now. In another 20, 30 years, it will be 2 billion people, all with rising aspirations, rising hopes, and rising carbon emissions. So we have a challenge on our hands. The 2011 Global Human Development Report tried to look at the links between environment and sustainability. And some interesting work was done in terms of projections. A lot of heavy modeling was done there. And the projections were that if present environmental trends continue, the future is going to be severely challenged. And there are different scenarios, but what it shows that if you take the worst case scenario, as yesterday's speakers and even this morning's, if you start hitting those upper limits, that human development levels may go backwards. And I think that's a big concern, and that's a concern for all countries, not just the BRICS. And that will, of course, make the development challenges much more difficult to close. And if we can manage to maintain our commitment and somehow shift the business models and keep the environment stable, inequality actually is expected to decrease. But if we go to the worst case scenario, inequality will go up as well. So this is part of the challenges. And this slide just talks about poverty. And if you look at $2 a person per day, in terms of percentage of population, you notice that India still has 68% of its population which it has to get out of poverty. China, about 30%. Well, these are talking about $2 a day. So the challenge of improving people's lives remains quite large. Now, this is a very interesting graph, and I hope people can see it properly. This plots human development levels with the ecological footprint. And when you see that, and there are different categories, and the different colors represent different categories, high human development countries, low human development countries. But what it shows fundamentally is that very few countries in the world at this point are sustainable. And there's a huge challenge of improving human development levels for low human development countries, typically low income countries, by moving up, but trying not to increase the ecological footprint, but fundamentally also for the more advanced countries to bring their footprints down. Because most of the colors in the blue on the right-hand side are the more advanced countries with very high ecological per capita footprints. Amartya Sen, who has been very closely involved in the work we do, highlighted as well, of course, the work we have done ourselves for some years. The issue is fundamentally about equity. If you think all human beings have the same value, the same rights to life claims, as we call it, to right to be educated, to have the same set of choices. So equality is important in the current generation, but equally we have to think of intergenerational equity, how this generation can leave a state which will allow the future generation choices not to be compromised. So we have to find a way of developing sustainability which will not reduce future choices. There's another graph which is to do with carbon productivity. and has a similar kind of message. I was based in China for many years, and we did some interesting work there and showed that even within a country, it is possible that you have equal, if you compare Beijing and Shanghai, roughly equal levels of human development, but very different levels of carbon emissions. So even within the country, it is possible to have different futures. And it is, in some ways, with the right policies, the right transformation, possible to have your cake and eat it too. So looking ahead. Many people have already talked about these matters, so I'm not going to say more. Technology is important. Urbanization is going to be a defining characteristic. Innovation, we heard earlier, is very important. Biocapacity, we talked about it. But all that is necessary, but the central point remains that any issue alone is not sufficient. We have to think of fundamental changes. You cannot count on technology giving you the answer. You cannot count on price signals giving you the answer. You need a systems change, and that's what Tom Friedman talked about yesterday as well. And I would like to submit 3 particular points which might define the way we move forward in this transformative endeavor. First, and this was in some ways missing in the conversation, the issue was what is public and what is private is going to have profound consequences. And the issue is simple. If you go for public transportation systems versus private transportation systems, the consequences are clear. If you design cities in ways which somehow push the workers in one geographic area and the jobs another, therefore creating a demand for energy systems to bring them one point to the other, all that has to change. If you follow a US model where most of these choices were very much privately driven, then clearly all of us with our emerging aspirations, we will need, as all of us know, 3 to 4 new planets to accommodate these rising aspirations. So the choice of what is public and what is private is a very central choice, and countries have to come to grips with that. The second one, of course, is innovation, and since people have talked about it, I'm not going to say more. But there's a view that if you can somehow get the price down of new and renewable energies, things will work. And maybe that is true, but we know also that the demand for energy is so large and so dramatic that we have to find smarter solutions. Some years ago, we launched a smart program in China of a $100 million program to introduce green lights for whole of China over a 4-year period. And if we succeed in that, which is nearly finishing that program now, that would result in a reduction of 8% in energy demand. But if you were to add new capacity, to add 8% more in energy output, that will cost several $100 billion. So there's a possibility of moving in that direction. A third point, which and I will close at that, is really to do with measurement. You measure, if you can measure something, you somehow shift that conversation into becoming that measure. And we have to find measures which will incorporate sustainability in our progress of humankind. At Rio, we had presented some early thinking on how the measurement system could look like. And if the slide is still here, okay, it's not there. The basic point was that there are some thresholds to be crossed at the global and local level, but we have to find a solution to getting new measures which allow us to track progress. Profound fundamental change will not happen spontaneously. We have to find ways to move it forward through metrics, through innovation, and through just being committed to systems change. Thank you so much.